Good morning, Holly here. In my continuing efforts of helping people alleviate the boredom of Corona quarantine, I have a couple more books that I wanted to share that I highly recommend, both of which are by Michael J. Fox. The first one is Lucky Man, and this was his, I guess you'd call it an autobiography, although it's not just him telling his life story. There is a heavy emphasis on his Parkinson's diagnosis and the way that it affected his life, but you do get his whole backstory. He talks about his childhood in Canada, how he got interested in acting, how he got started. You go through the success of Family Ties and Back to the Future and all of that. So the book actually starts with literally the first time that he noticed a Parkinson's symptom, which of course at the time he didn't realize that's what it was. So then you flash back to his early days and then carry all the way up through him getting his diagnosis, his feelings on that, the way that it affected his life. He speaks very honestly about the issues that he had with alcohol after his diagnosis and what a dark path he was kind of on for a while, which was very hidden from the public. Most people were not aware of it until this book. He talks about how he and his wife Tracy met and got to know each other, how they came together, which is amusing because apparently it was not love at first sight for her. She thought he was a bit of an ass, and it turns out he was. So it goes through all of that, their courtship, their marriage, their children, and the effects that everything that Parkinson's had on every aspect of his life, how difficult it became keeping this secret, and why he chose to finally share it, which honestly is just because he couldn't hide it anymore. So this book came out in 2002, I believe. Yeah, 2002. And so it covers that whole, kind of whole life, but there is a heavy emphasis on the Parkinson's and how it affected his work, his family, his attitude, everything. And the big wake-up call that his wife gave him in regards to his drinking, when he became aware that he had a problem that absolutely had to be dealt with, which was a very interesting story. And for him was, that was, he didn't have to hit rock bottom, but he did need that slap in the face, and that was one of many interesting stories. The other one that I found to be incredibly interesting and kind of brave of him to tell, because he is not the good guy in this story, was circumstances immediately following his father's death, which came during a time that he was still drinking. And again, ass is the word that comes to mind. He was a bit of an ass with his siblings, and he doesn't try and hide from the fact that he was very much in the wrong. And I found myself thinking at one point, if I was his brother, I probably would have beat the crap out of him, and he's probably lucky that didn't happen. But Lucky Man was, the title that he chose for this, and he explains why. A lot of people might not think of him as being very lucky given, his medical issues, but he explains it, and it always comes across as seeming very sincere and not, a lot of times people take some kind of tragedy and they'll say, oh, it turns out it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But it always feels like a little bit of BS to me. But somehow he comes across as being very sincere when talking about how lucky he actually feels. So that's the first one. The second one is called Always Looking Up: The Adventures of an Incurable Optimist. Now this one is about a very specific time of life. It's over about a 10-year period, and it starts with his retirement from Spin City, which was difficult but really necessary for him. And this one talks a lot about the forming of the Parkinson's Foundation that he started, the money that was raised for research, all of those things. He gets into the changes that he had had in his health since then, things that had become more difficult. Talks a lot more about treatments that were tried and maybe didn't work as well as he wanted. The addition of another child. They had another daughter, and the effects that his illness has had on his kids. You know, how it's affected what he does as a father and their reactions to it. I mean, you know, you got to bear in mind that for most of his children, this is the only way they've ever known him. His nickname is Shaky Dad, which to some people might seem, you know, tacky, but I think it's awesome to be able to make light of something that most of the time is just so heavy. So that one is also, again, just it's a good read. I mean, he manages to put a lot of humor in things, but also is not disrespectful to the importance of the subject on hand. And also he's very aware that he is lucky in the sense that with his money and his influence and his fame, that it opens certain doors for him and it makes certain things easier for him. And you know, he's very aware that for many, you know, if he wants a private nurse or if he wants a personal assistant to help make life easier, take care of the things that he has a hard time with on his own, he can do that. And he knows that many people with his same condition can't. So, you know, he never forgets that. He definitely has gratitude for the blessings that he does have in his life. It's also nice to see him talking about his relationship with Tracy. I mean, by Hollywood standards, they've been together absolutely forever. I mean, you know, it was the 80s when they first came together, and they've been together this whole time with not really ever a hint of any kind of scandal or anything. It seems like the biggest struggles that they had were the things that went on behind the scenes, his drinking and things like that. And she stood by him through a lot, and she was patient and understanding about a lot of things, but she also let him know that there were some things that she would not compromise on. And when it became a concern of whether or not it was okay to leave their son with him, you know, that was something she let him know that she would not tolerate. So he had a choice. He was going to get it together or he was going to go it alone. And thankfully, you know, he chose to get it together. So either of those two books, I would highly recommend. It's interesting. You know, I've seen lots of interviews with him, and he's talked about these subjects a lot. And so some of this stuff, you know, you've heard the people ask the questions, oh, when did you notice the symptoms? Why did you keep it a secret? But this was the first opportunity for him to tell his story fully, completely, the way that he wanted, and not have it condensed down to a 15 or 20-minute interview. So if you ever wanted, you know, the whole story, or you want, and there's also for the you know, for the movie buffs out there, there's, you know, interesting little behind the scenes things on Back to the Future and Teen Wolf and, you know, all these different movies of his. So whether you're just a fan of Michael J. Fox the actor or Michael J. Fox the person, or you want to see the inside story of what life is like sometimes for someone with Parkinson's, any of these reasons are good reasons to pick up either of those books. Honestly, I recommend both of them. But if you do decide to read them, definitely read Lucky Man first, and then follow it up with Always Looking Up. Happy reading. Leave any questions, comments, thoughts in the comments below. Have a good one. Bye.